Oh, really?
Don't go into it, no.
If you go there with the camera, you just don't want to go.
And so these guys saw it on one of the social media pages and decided to come up from Ashburton.
Wow.
All the way from Ashburton.
Good
Yeah,
effort.
and find out what's going on. Not just with firearms, because you're not shooters, are you?
No.
No, that's interesting. So you're not even shooters, but you want to find out what's going on with New Conservative and this election, and obviously in the process that you're interested in.
Well, it affects me in the fact that, we process wilding,
Yeah,
so there's that side of it.
right.
But
So
there's
that's
more than firearms,
recreation.
you know, it's the whole outdoor.
It is,
thing
it's
where
everything.
the Joe public
Yeah.
has no idea, the city dweller, what issues there are with access to land,
yeah,
to, right at Queen's Chain,
Yeah.
etc.
yeah,
To actually get out there, and as far as we're concerned with firearms, a lot of the tenure and things like that, once they've finally got through the process of ticking the box and saying, yeah, we'll buy the land off you, or now you can buy the land and lease it. They've gone through 10 years of tick, 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 they get down to here, say, oh, anything under that we won't do, and that's where right of access and everything is.
yeah,
And once you lose it, you don't get it back.
yeah.
You know, we're quite happy to go out to the bush and listen to the birds tweet and do our trapping and do all that conservation stuff. But if you can't get out there,
Yeah.
that's it.
So for those who don't know, this is Ian Brads, sorry, and he's the president of the Guestholders
This is
Association.
my house.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good coding it.
Yeah, apologise for the lack of turnout.
that's
We
not your
advertise
fault.
as well, but as we mentioned, apathy is rife.
So while the video's going, do you want to tell us about the Ashburton?
Oh, we had, obviously there's firearms amendments which is affecting everybody, not just firearms holders. People don't understand the implications of some of the laws that they're trying to pass with right of access into houses and things. It's like the police doing their facial recognition software without asking anybody,
Yeah.
just thinking it's sneaking into the house. And if you don't have anything to hide, you shouldn't be worried.
Yeah.
But if you are under stress and your doctor has to tell the police, if you're a father and a firearm holder, if you're not under stress, you're a liar, because you've got water rights, you've got rural bank, you've got your bonus, etc.
Was that father-in-law?
Yeah, so we obviously were quite intent on the firearms marches, rallies, and mentioned to the club, we had one member who put a bus on,
Yeah.
and we got 4 people turning up. In fact, I parked my car at Hornby and took the bus because it was a bit embarrassing to only have 3 people on it.
Yeah, so that was to Ashburton.
That was to Ashburton.
Yeah, and they had a tank, was that one of the tank
Yeah,
ones?
that was one of the tank ones.
The tank there, Stuart Hyde's organised that, Stuart does a great job in organising those.
And also publishing all the information to keep
Yeah.
people thinking.
Yeah, and there was still a reasonable turnout, there's a couple of hundred.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
People don't understand that the changes are significant.
yeah.
And as I said, it's not just for
And so,
people with guns, it's actually for all the public.
so to put that 4 into perspective, how many members do you have in the club?
300.
304 went.
But saying that, we've got maybe 50 turn up at a meeting.
Yeah.
So some of them are just, members, some go hunting or
Yeah.
in companies arrangements about it. But, it's pretty accurate.
Right.
And when shit happens, who's to blame? Who didn't turn up? Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone should do something about it.
yeah. So that's really good. So there's a couple of things there, 10-year review and the firearms laws. So the video is rolling, and so we should probably introduce people. We've got Leighton and Sue Baker here, which is the new Conservative leaders. We've got Victoria O'Brien, who's our number 3 on our list, and our firearms spokeswoman. She's stroppy, so don't annoy her. I've spent the last 4 days travelling through the Waitaki electorate with Victoria. It's been fantastic, and we've been shooting down there with the Central Target Pistol Club. We've talked to the Oamaru North Targa Deer Stalkers Association. There was probably, I don't know, 50 odd people there. And had a really good chat with them. And it's been a great trip. We've been really well received. Talking a lot about firearms, and Victoria will talk more about that later. We've also got some other members from New Conservatives here. We've got Caleb Honus here, who's Banks Peninsula, and Ben Price, sorry, who's, where are you? Central Christchurch. Yeah. So that's, and me, Troy Allen, and Waitaki. And these are my kids. Two of them have been helping us this week, and they've been fantastic. So, to build on what Ian's just said, where do you want to go? Where?
Well,
Leighton?
this actually affects the whole industry. The whole reason I'm here is because of my job. Now, I work for a company that makes packaging, and this is starting to affect our business because we do a lot of meat packaging for the likes of Ansco, Silver Fern, and other companies. And our demands for orders are starting to drop off, and in the future that means jobs.
Yeah.
So it's affecting everyone.
So it's affecting jobs.
It's starting to affect us even.
Yeah. And the meat packers, so that's the helicopters bringing the wild game in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're dressing that down? Yeah.
But also you've got the likes of land access.
Yeah.
There is a lot of what Doc would call them pests around the place. Some of them being rats and stoats and all those nasties. If we can't get in there to trap them, the easiest way is to dump 1080 across the whole lot.
Okay.
And you can't stop 1080 until you've got some other thing to do it.
Yeah.
But if you can't get into the land, if you can't get into the Slate Summit RHA, because the farmer,
Won't let you through.
well, he says the paper road's through that swamp and we're not letting you go there, you can't get him to do that, so therefore the animals aren't looked after, and best thing to do is tell the kids to move out the way and dump the 1080 on it.
Well, we've been killing turkey with that
Well,
recently.
they're doing everything with it. And so until you've actually got human access in there,
Yeah.
and, bounties for animals again.
Yeah.
You used to get $5 for possum skin, and those kids used to go out there and actually get out and stop playing with it.
I put myself through Lincoln with possum skins, $25 a skin for the top skins. Yeah, shot poison in the trap. Yeah. So we've got 1080 now. We've got 10-year review, which is a pretty lucky. Ashton wasn't here because that's he's all over that. He's our farming representative in Rangitata. But I know a fair bit about that one, so but Leighton probably knows a lot about everything, so he can probably. And firearms laws. So where do you want to go, boss?
Oh, I think Victoria's come down, so it'd be great to hear her talking about the firearms thing, and then I can address anything else we've got questions. We'd better answer the question you guys have got, because we could prattle on about 50 different things that you're not interested in. So I think if Victoria, if you go ahead and just talk about the firearms legislation and what we're proposing to do about it and others, and whatever your spiel is on that, and then we might just take questions, go around and take questions and address the different issues like our plan with 1080, we can put out front of the way we see we're dealing with that, the RMA. So that'll probably be the best way to go.
Sounds good. So, with the firearms laws, they have, so much has happened so quickly, and it is quite complicated, probably deliberately designed so, because as we well know, Jim Collins was very open in the Vice documentary on how they removed firearms from New Zealand in 28 days. It says it's going to happen so quickly, they won't know it's happened. So, what has happened, and in fact that the Law Society in fact submitted against the first tranche of firearms laws, mainly because of two items, and that was the Orders in Council that came out. Orders in Council are amazing little legal devices that mean that the government, in fact a very small group of the government, can ban overnight any item that they like. These two items are any ammunition and any magazines. They don't have to pay compensation at all. So think about it. This is private property that you've saved for, you've bought legally, you've stored legally, you use legally, and then overnight it's just taken away from you. And there's no warning and there's no recourse. Because both the Kiwi Party against the Attorney General last year and Colfo against the Attorney General this year, came out and High Court said in both instances that Parliament is supreme. So Parliament being supreme means there is no right, human right in New Zealand that is absolute. And chills should run through all of us when we hear that. A notable Green MP, Clarissa Raman, in fact said that a couple of years ago, and I'm sure nobody believed her at the time, that no human right is absolute. But she's right. Because in the High Court, at the Kiwi Party Business Attorney General, I was there, and Graham Minchin, the barrister, said, "So, Your Honour, you telling me that if Parliament passed a law tomorrow that said that every blue-eyed baby had to be beheaded, there's nothing we can do?" And His Honour said, "Parliament is supreme." That was his reply. So we have no recourse. Parliament, 61 majority, can pass anything they like. This is not a situation that's what we thought was New Zealand. This is a dictatorship. And democracy, as you well know, is very much at the heart of where New Conservative is. Right? BCIR, so Binding Citizens Initiative Referenda, balanced quite nicely by the Legislative Standards Act policy, will ensure that all our rights are protected in perpetuity. Now, what is the Binding Citizens Initiative Referenda? I think the name for it speaks for itself. So I won't necessarily go into that. One of the concerns that people have about that is that what if a whole bunch of Aucklanders decided that they're going to just take away all our firearms? Well, that's where the Legislative Standards Act policy comes in, because it holds both the Magna Carta and the 1688 Bill of Rights inviolate. It means that the rights and freedoms which are contained in those two fundamental pieces of legislation that are frameworks of our entire legal system, not just for New Zealand, but for the Commonwealth and also for the US, forms the basis of the US Constitution. Those rights and freedoms can never be trespassed. That us as individual citizens will be able to challenge any law that's passed or has been passed in court and get it challenged against those two items of legislation. It means that passing fads can come and go, but those rights will never be trespassed. That's why those two key items are so important. It gives us, the citizens, the right to participate in government again, and it restricts Parliament, future Parliament powers forever. So this is why it's so important to consider the policies of New Conservative. New Conservative is also really, it regards communities as being really important, and the firearms community. Elliot's been everywhere talking about the importance of community, and he's a big community guy. Firearms community is one of the most inclusive communities around. Turn up to plenty of clubs, and we have in the last few days, and as people don't know us, and yet we're welcomed in because firearms owners, we shoot. Everyone shoots together, and it's fun. It's a great equaliser, firearms, because you go to shooting and everyone says, "Oh, it's wonderful, I don't care how much money you've got or where you come from, you shoot." It's all good. We would like to protect communities. They are part of New Zealand's identity. We use firearms for our livelihoods, for pest control, for recreation. And so that's why we have something called the zero net immigration policy. Until all our infrastructure can catch up, we're definitely not totally open immigration. We don't support the UN Global Compact on Migration. We are very interested in seeing that New Zealanders are taken care of first. So when you see a party that says it is pro-immigration, that has a policy that openly states, build, baby, build, you should be very, very cautious. Our firearms ranges are already suffering a great deal of threat from urban sprawl. Combine those two policies and you can see where we're going. Gisborne Pistol Club is a prime candidate for this sort of thing. Was issued a resource consent that was challenged in court, judicial review. Anybody can do it. They have no money to defend it. So now they're facing increasing restrictions on shooting time, shooting days, and they are severely under threat. They've got 35 members or something. So where are they going to get the money to keep fighting these court cases? Where's the Auckland Shooting Club in Auckland going to fight these cases? Auckland Shooting Club's a prime example. Bit of land in the middle of nowhere, an hour out of town, surrounded on two sides by commercial forest. Once again, resource consent. Council's not fighting it. Urban sprawl. People complaining, people visit the area. Auckland Pistol Club. Once again. So these are all clubs that are around communities and cities and towns where people go to join together with their friends, do recreation, and they're all under threat. And that was even before the second tranche came in. Now we've got the second tranche. Part 6 of the second tranche has all these conditions now around firearms ranges and requires firearms because the farmer who owns the land has said, I'm sorry, this legislation's come in now, I don't want to get in trouble. So, sorry, you guys are going to find somewhere else to shoot. So people who thought that their access to shooting was pretty much guaranteed because it's on private land and the farmer's accommodating, have now realised that's not the case. Even if you own your own land and you have the money to apply for a resource consent, just like Auckland Pistol Club did, Auckland Shooting Club, you find that if you apply for a resource consent, you get it, you still have to defend it. And it's a never-ending spiral of money. The police now have to approve, certify a pistol range, or even any firearms range. It used to be just pistol ranges, now it's any firearms range. The criteria which they apply is very strict indeed. I know I have to go through it with the Auckland Shooting Club. All pistol clubs have to go through it. Berms have to be a certain height. Shooting butts, no danger areas behind your shooting areas. And if you have to have earthworks, guess what? You have to have resource consent for earthworks. Where's all this money going to come from? This is a great way to slowly but surely strangle and remove shooting areas for all of us. So, you take away shooting places and communities, because for recreation we go to ranges, we participate in events, could be small ball, could be large ball, whatever it is, hang out with your friends. Take away the firearms that you use for pest control, because semi-automatic firearms are very convenient, removing wallabies, removing wild pigs. I've got that policy, I've got that problem right now in my place. I've got wild pigs in the southern paddocks and ripping them all up. Husband goes out, and tonight he's out there hunting, and he'll see easily 6 or 7 in a mob, all different sizes, they come on, and now he's just got a bolt action. Even with the suppressor, you shoot one, the rest gone. One at a time. Each sow can have 10 piglets at a time. And there have been instances where they've gone out 2 or 3 people to shoot, got 3 sows. One had 10, one had 7, one had 9. Breeding season, right? How can we stop them? It takes a whole evening. Husband goes out to shoot 1 pig at a time.
And the more you shoot and they run away, you're
Correct.
gunshot at the
That's right, yeah.
As soon as you pull up,
Yep.
they're on.
Yeah. Whereas a semi, how many would you get?
Oh, you'd be able to get 5, 6, 7 all at once.
Exactly.
So, we've got removal of our recreation and communities. Pest control is now becoming a problem. And South Island, with wallabies, we've got the problem, wild pigs. So that means our livelihoods are being impacted. Now, as Ian has said, we're also too afraid to go to the doctor, because in section 24A or B of the second tranche, it now says, well, here's all this criteria, and in amongst that criteria is the loss of doctor-patient confidentiality. So if you have a firearms license, you have to tell the police if you are moving GPs. If you go to your GP and say, look, this whole virus lockdown has really affected me, I'm feeling a bit low, I'm struggling a bit, GP will be obligated to tell the police. Then suddenly, you are not fit to own firearms, and take away your license, take away your property again. This is a terrible barrier to getting people to ask for help. Rural GPs that have already submitted against this part of the second tranche and said, look, it's already hard enough for me to get my patients to come and see me, and you're putting more barriers in front of them. Meanwhile, of course, don't forget, they're taking away communities so that you can't hang out with your friends as easily as you did. You can't blink on their land. So this is all a massive attack on rural lifestyles and what we've seen as a traditional rural New Zealand way of life. So this is much, much wider than just firearms. Much. And it's even wider than just property rights, as fundamental as they are. This is actually an attack on our way of life. And so when people say, oh no, it's just about firearms, it's just about process. It's not just about process, or correct process. Sure, that wasn't followed. Whole law was introduced, submissions done, everything in Parliament, all the way through to Royal Assent, 11 days. 1st of April, how many of us thought it was April Fool's joke? Right? Passed on the 11th, that's it. During the brawl. So many hunters were out in the middle of nowhere with no internet access, and they were expected to know that the BAR that they were using to hunt, right at that point, suddenly, that's it, prohibited. You wouldn't know. That's what happened. That was the first tranche. And then now you've got the second tranche in, once again, section 24A and 24B. Very last clause in section 24A and 24B, all that section says is that this is a list of criteria that police can use to refuse your firearms license. Quite a long list. And police need to be careful. However, the very, very last clause states that police can use any other criteria as decided by regulation as long as it's in the spirit of this Act. And which parties agreed to it? Every single party in Parliament. Everyone.
So that, just to clarify, that's including Act.
Including Act.
Thank you.
So, makes it more difficult for us to shoot in communities, makes it more difficult for us to get help, makes it more difficult for our livelihoods, now makes it more difficult for us to obtain a firearms license because it's limitless criteria. And of course, you have a pro-immigration, pro-build, baby build, makes it even more difficult for us even to have clubs at all. New Conservative is a party of great principles and ethics. That means if we say something, we cannot be bought. We cannot say, oh yes, let's trade something. If there is a line in the sand, that's it. We've come up with a policy, it's because we truly believe in it. Yeah. It's backed by our principles and values. Yeah. Now I invite you to just think about what's happened in the last couple of days. A politician has come out and said, obviously in his negotiations with a major party, has come out and said, there are no bottom lines. Now, this politician has also come out and said we are for firearms rights. Are you going to believe this politician if they come out and say both things? No. Because obviously career politicians are there to exist from one election to the next and to the next. They are there because it's a career. They're there because their mates are in the lift with them every day when they go to work. And they have drinks with them. And they have coffees. And what I say to you today, I might attack you in the house today, but I'm going to see you tomorrow for coffee. So, here we are. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. because we both want to be here 10 years from now. This is a job, it pays really well, it's got great perks. So I'm going to make sure that I'm there and I'm going to negotiate. So we have no bottom lines. Everything's possible. I'd say beware of such politicians. A lot of firearms owners voted for New Zealand First last time.
Guilty.
Where did that lead us? I say if we want to have real values and principles in Parliament, we are absolutely going to have to vote for it. Because we've been voting for the same bunch of people with no values, have everything tradable for years. And this is where we've got us now. If we really, really want to change, we're going to have to draw a line in the sand and say to everyone, no, this is it. We're not putting up with this anymore. Same bunch of you betrayed us every time.
Yeah.
This is just a long slide into the loss of New Zealand's identity and loss of our rights. Whether it's fast or slow, with this bunch, that's all you get to decide.
Yeah.
Same thing. So I really urge you, first of all, read the policies. Secondly, look at exactly what they do, not just what they say. 3 out of the 4 on the list at the top of New Conservatives' list are firearms owners or current and former farmers. 3 out of 4. Not just one token person. This is how important this issue is to us, that we've placed people at the top of the list. So we really do believe what we say, and those are our actions to back it up. And ACT and National are absolutely terrified we will get in, because we can't be bought.
Yeah.
This is why you suddenly have someone saying very famously and quoted everywhere in the last couple of days, using religion as a tradable tool. I'm Christian, suddenly. Now, would someone say that if New Conservative was not a threat? I don't think so. It's very convenient. But it also speaks volumes if someone can use that as a tradable tool. So I put it to you, if you want a change, if you want real representation in Parliament, you actually have to vote for it, and that's going to be New Conservative, and that's why I'm there.
Well
Okay.
said. Very good.
Oh, you got my vote.
Excellent.
I talked to some farmer friends before the first tranche even happened, and they said we can't talk about guns at the moment. All we're concentrating on is trying to figure out whether we're going to have any water to water the farm,
Yep.
and whether we're allowed to put any fertiliser on.
Yep.
And that particular farmer had, and I'd seen them there for years, and I paid them attention, little monitoring things, weather stations, and they also were checking nutrient levels in multiple places around the farm. And he said, we've been told now that the data acquisition system was out by 27% or something like that. And he said, but they haven't said whether it was plus or minus. And he said, we've been told that whatever way it goes, it doesn't matter. This is the data we've got, this is the data we'll judge you on. And he goes, I'm just fighting to figure out whether I can even have a farm in the next year or two.
Or
Yep.
if I need to put 400 metres per gate, more fencing.
Yeah.
Because I've got a tree there that looks native.
There's all these attacks are mounting up.
But people don't realise that at the moment it's the farmers and the hunters getting hammered, but that doesn't ever stop it. It never does. When you've got a government that's determined to have more power and more authority, they basically pick on the outliers first, the ones they can take, and they work on the little bits, and they just get bigger and bigger until finally what's left is so small they can grab them, and that's just what happens. And that's, you know, as a young fellow I was never really interested in the whole socialism, capitalism, communism type thing. I didn't really understand it or care about it, but as we got involved in it and seeing what's happened, you can just see that slide. You know, capitalism is basically hands off by the government. They're just there to make sure we all survive, and we'll go out of our own way and make the money we can get rewarded for effort. Pure capitalism doesn't work because people are greedy, but capitalism is probably very efficient. Socialism is when the government controls everything, and I think that's what we're seeing with this government. They want to control everything, and they want everyone dependent on them. That's why they're so determined to increase welfare, give out money, left, right, and centre. Want to bring in the, top one, the UBI. I know the Greens are really keen on that as well. Basically making more and more people dependent on the government. If you're dependent on them, you're enslaved to them. That's basically how it goes, and it's a power grab. And the other thing socialists do is like taking property rights off people. We've seen that with the firearms, with what's happened with the latest rental rules. It's just taking private property rights off individuals. Communism is when the government owns everything. Socialism is when they control everything. We're in the control phase now and moving towards the ownership phase. And, you know, the farming's, you've got what's happening with the farmers with the firearms and the nutrients, but with the winter grazing rules, basically farmers are meant to be planting now for next year, and they don't even know if they can plant or if they'll be able to graze it if they do. See how much pressure that does that put on you when you know what you're meant to be doing now for next year, and you're not even sure if you'll be able to do it, and if you do, whether they'll let you actually graze it. And then massive amounts of pressure on them. And then, Greens are saying the other one, a wealth tax. So again, that's a hit on the farmers, because if a farmer owns a property, a farm worth $10 million, they'll be required to pay $100,000 every year in tax. And he may not have the turnover or the income to generate that, so in which case he's got to reverse mortgage his farm simply to pay a wealth tax. It's just hammer, 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 hammer. And we got a letter 3 weeks ago from a young guy who said, a fourth generation farmer, we'll be walking off the land in 2022. We just can't stay here any longer. It's too hard, too difficult, too much regulation, too much stress, no return, why bother? And I think most New Zealanders don't understand that farmers bring in over 30% of our income. 30%. At the time we've got no money coming in, apart from basically what the farmers and a few other manufacturers are doing. Why would you hurt that?
Supermarkets are pretty empty at farms.
Well, I don't know if like your pine cones, easy over or sunny side up. That's reality, isn't it? So I've got this ideology around carbon credits, and that's part of what they're selling is the whole carbon credit thing. That we'll plant pine trees everywhere because it'll make us clean and green. When it just all it does is destroy the land. I don't think most people understand that the pine trees are only a 15-year program. You can't claim any credits for the first 4 or 5 years. You've got to stop at year 18. So it's a 15-year program, and once they're finished growing, if you harvest them, you have to replant to replace the ones you harvest. So there's no more claiming credits. And if you don't harvest them, they're just going to fall over and release the carbon anyway. So it's a failed system, but what it does is destroys farmland. Gets the farmers off their land. We were down about Clutha, 6 weeks ago now. Well, that's not harm going. So what's happening then? Abattoirs are going to shut down. Abattoirs shut down. Schools will shrink. They'll lose teachers in the schools. The banks will move out. The doctors will move away. The shops shut. You get in the cafes. You got nothing. And we've already seen that go through the rural New Zealand previously, and it will be far worse this time. And that's whole communities dead. The whole culture changed for the nation, and for what benefit? Nothing. Because the people that are making money out of the pine carbon credits, international forestry companies. So we are actually paying tax money. Our tax money goes to give these people so they can come here and buy our land and plant pine trees on it so that we can't have jobs anymore. That's the reality of the stupidity of it. And no one's standing up for it, none at all.
And the thing is, our company was recently bought out by a Japanese company, but that same, well, not company, it's a whole group of companies. But that same group of companies has also bought a whole bunch of land for the sole purpose of planting trees.
Yep.
I mean, and we're talking thousands of hectares.
And the other thing people don't realise about trees, how much water they suck out of the ground. People don't know. What do you guys reckon on here? Got an idea apart from those that heard me talk before?
Well, I've got 3 pungas at home and we can't plant anything in that garden because they just don't get any nutrients.
How much water do you reckon a pine tree sucks out every day?
What size pine tree?
You're the first person to ask me that. I've been asked every time. Depends on the size of the pine tree. Of course it does. On average, we reckon between 160 and 300 litres a day. So you plant 1 billion pine trees, even if it's 100 litres a day, it's 100 billion litres of water a day. And if you've got 5 million Kiwis, us, not the birds, and we use 200 litres each a day, that's our allotment. You know, that's 1 billion litres. So this billion pine trees we use 100 times, at minimum of 100 to 300 times what we use as residential population. And so up the Kaiwi Lakes, and if there was no that is, it's just at a Dargaville, beautiful wee spot. They've just chopped all the pine trees around it, and the lake qualities come up and the lake levels come up. So, you know, they're not just destroying the land, they're destroying the farms, they're putting the land in foreign ownership, and they're removing our water for no gain. There's absolutely no measurable gain we'll get by going to carbon zero, nothing. Because China's still putting out a coal-fired power station once a month to build a new one. So, you know, the whole thing's illogical and sensible, but it's a government of the ideology. And they've just come out now and said they're going to rewrite the RMA. And that scares the heck out of me, because what are they going to put in there? You know, they're just going to be, if you've got no rainbow shoes on, you're not allowed to walk on this road. That's the ideology driven with no understanding of unintended consequence or anything. So, yeah, we are a little bit behind the 8 ball at the moment. And I think...
Stop you there.
Yeah.
Behind the 8 ball means you're it's penultimate, you're almost finished. If you're behind, you're behind. If you're behind the 8 ball, you're actually second to finishing. You're right there. So just remember that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're not going well as far as the nation. I think we get the same government or similar government in the next round. I think most New Zealanders are going to wake up in 3 years going, what happened to our freedom?
Yeah.
Because we've been banging on about this for years now, that your freedom is actually what gives democracy. That democracy gives us our freedom. It's our ability to debate, discuss, argue, yell and scream at each other, but come to consensus of what's better for us as a nation. That's what democracy does. And the key to that is freedom of speech, for us being able to actually say what we think about an issue, for Victoria to be able to say about firearms, or someone to be able to speak about gender or whatever. But the loss of freedom of speech will be making it illegal for us to say these things.
Yeah.
And that's why when the Prime Minister was asked what it takes speech, she said, oh, you'll know it when you hear it.
We'll make it up.
Which basically means it's subjective, which means they can make it whatever they want it to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately then, you know, it's not that big a step to anything criticising the government as hate speech. That's the logical step for people that want control. So, you know, in New Zealand at the moment we are, it's a last gasp effort to stop a roll through of a socialist government that is going to take away your freedom of speech. Has already taken away our democracy. You've seen that with the firearms legislation, with I think it's 170 bits of legislation passed in 3 years. Most of them we know nothing about. So we've lost our democracy already. That's what we've been fighting for the last 10 years. The democracy's gone. We're about to take our freedom of speech. Once that's gone, you have lost your freedom. And freedom is easy to lose, but really, really hard to get back. And so we've been around the nation saying, wake up guys, because when it's gone, it is really hard, which would be a terrible shame.
What scares me is I actually downloaded and I read every single page of the COVID Act, and when I realised the powers they actually have, I mean, they could, my child, for example, could contract COVID, and police could march in and they could say, your child's got COVID, we're going to take your child and we're going to take your property.
Correct.
And I mean, that's got absolute, this is
And I don't
not
think
about
they have to
COVID.
prove they've got COVID.
No, it's a
Yeah.
They suspect.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, most of our police are really good. Most of our police are really, really good. You know, they deal with the worst people in society. Most of them are really good, but you only need to get a change in what happens with how you recruit police or how they're trained. And I think we have seen the police get too politicised. The police will be totally separate from politics.
That's the same as the second tranche regulations that are saying that if the police suspect you have firearms on your property, they can come in without a warrant, and if they have to search for them, they can basically damage your property to find them. But don't worry, this is only for gangs. Well, it doesn't say that in the legislation. It says if they suspect you have a firearm. Well, I'm a licensed firearm owner. They're pretty damn sure I've got a firearm. So they can come in quite happily using section whatever it is.
Yeah.
And people, oh no, don't worry. You know, if you've got nothing to hide, don't worry, because it's only for the gangs. Oh, those ones that they went around and got all the illegal firearms off instead of all the law-abiding people giving their
Oh, did they do
legal
that?
ones.
Yeah. No.
That's exactly the point. It's not unprecedented. And I was on the AIM show this week, and they asked me about the referendums coming up on both euthanasia and cannabis, and I said, well, the government don't have to adhere to them. They said, oh yeah, they'll be binding. I said, mate, don't you understand? They've never listened to a citizens initiated referendum in their lives. Don't government never has. So why would they say there's a binding on them? What makes you think that? You know, they do not actually fulfil their obligations to represent the people. They have an agenda and they work to it. And unfortunately, we're so gullible, exactly like you say. Firearms Amendment Act came in, they took firearms of legal people, law-abiding citizens, handed the legal owned firearms, tens of thousands of police hours, of the police standing there watching law-abiding citizens hand in their legal owned property, and meanwhile the gangs are going around them, and still got their illegal firearms. So, we have genuine reasons in New Zealand to be concerned by the way the government's going, and it will only stop if we get enough good people in there that understand what's happening and willing to put their necks on the line for it. That's the reality of it. And there's too many people being sucked in by a sweet smile and being nice, and it is to a detriment. But we're trying to do a bit of a wake-up call to people, because the writing's on the wall, and there's too many people asleep at the wheel just looking at it going, oh, can't happen in New Zealand. It already is. There's no time. Is it you? Hey, but you guys ask some questions. Let's go to Ted, you're smart.
I'm actually really concerned about the politicisation of children in schools at the moment. Recently, I was talking with my daughter, and she's been asked to write a letter to the Prime Minister encouraging her to allow more people in immigration, which blew me away, because I don't expect my daughter to be A, politicised, or B, writing to a Prime Minister about a thing that she doesn't even understand why she's doing it. And you know, there's a number of things that have occurred in the last 12 months with my daughter, especially now that I've had the opportunity to get really involved with her education following the lockdown that we've gone through, and actually really seeing day to day what she's been learning. I'm very concerned about what's going on there.
Yep, there's a whole lot happening in the schools, and again, it's ideologically driven. The sex religion has been pumped through them the whole time. And what you may not understand is what they're teaching children from 3 years old on upwards. But the whole gender thing, that they can choose whatever gender they want, they're not necessarily a boy or a girl. But apparently, I heard from a speaker last week, there is a ballot in the box which could be pulled out at any time, and it's a law they want to bring in. They would make it illegal for you as a parent or anyone to counsel them against that. So if your daughter came home and said, actually I've decided I'm going to be a boy, I'm going to start hormone treatment and therapy on the line to get an operation, and you said, no, you're actually a girl and you can wait until you're older and as an adult make that decision, but until then, as your legal guardian, I'm saying, no, you remain a girl till then, you'll be breaking the law and you can be prosecuted. So people don't understand it, and if you read what they're being taught in schools, we've got some of the literature that they're being taught, that they're being put through, and it is push all the time, this ideology. And so that's on the gender side of it, but you've also got the whole, the science is settled over climate change, and how many young children are getting out of process of climate change, and yet Al Gore said 15 years ago we'll be drowning by now, and I go down the beach, I can't see any difference whatsoever. So the logical part of my brain says we've been sold a pup, but our children have been told this is true, this is absolute, you're destroying the planet. All the wicked people, the farmers, those evil farmers are destroying the planet, and it's simply not true. It's not scientifically backed up at all. Science is always being challenged, always being discussed, but no one can quantify the effect man has on the planet. No one can quantify that. And if man cannot control the environment, which we understand, he can't control it, he may have a negative effect on it, but we can't even quantify that. What we do know is if New Zealand went carbon zero tomorrow, it would make no discernible difference. So we've got these children being fed all this stuff all the time without actually full backup on it, and these people believe it because their teachers have more time on them than you do as a parent.
We won't damage the planet. We can't damage the planet. The planet is going to survive. It may not be suitable for humans to live in, but the planet will still survive.
That'll do what it needs to do to protect itself.
Exactly.
Yep.
And we'll come back, because carbon itself is a closed cycle. There's no carbon coming from outer space.
No.
So the carbon that's on it is on it now.
Child poverty. Well, the children aren't actually poor. Their parents are poor or a bad spending mode. But they've said, oh no, we use the term child poverty now because it gets more empathy. So people are more likely to do something about it. So basically you're making something up and you're lying to generate, oh, yeah, we better go that way.
Yep.
And,
It's an emotional
hey,
response.
let's give them more subsidies so they can spend it on more things, as opposed to let's educate, let's get work out there, It's, keep people, great outdoors and doing.
So I just want to make it clear, we're not paying Ian at all. Ian's just...
But, it's any party can do this.
Food Banks had come out just recently and said the same thing. Food Banks had come out just recently and said actually it's a failed experiment. Because what we're finding is we're giving food out to people who are spending the money they should have been spending on food now on alcohol, cigarettes and drugs. So you're not all of them, but so many that come regularly. So different if people come occasionally, they've got a hard week or something's gone wrong with them, the dental bill, doctor bill. But those that are regularly turning up, they'll get in the habit of being given stuff, dependency equals poverty. And so now the money that they should be spending on that is being reallocated.
We've got some produce farmers who, donated tons of potatoes to food banks to be turned away to say, oh, I'm sorry, our clientele can't cook. So we can't use your potatoes, we're sorry. They can get McDonald's vouchers, that works. So, free range organic meat on the hoof.
So we can't solve all the issues in one day, but what we've got to, and the good thing about being involved in politics is we have been able to get up and speak things out in front of people and see them change. So it's interesting that both all National Labour and ACT have come out and changed their stance on the farming and integration. They started changing their wording, their understanding that what they brought out was unworkable and never going to be effective. So because we've come out really strong and said that is an absolute joke, it's never going to happen, it's unworkable law, they've turned. So we're still having an effect even not being in government yet, because all we're bringing is logical, common sense reason. But unfortunately, once they're empowered again for another 3 years, because that's what this is about. From October the 17th, so another group of people, the same group of people, are going to be empowered for the next 3 years to do whatever they feel like. And I think New Zealanders don't get just how quickly they can change society with that.
A friend has been working in oil industry most of his life, and he said he recently had in Britain, or government, or a big consultant, a report about electrification for cars on New Zealand roads. And it was modeled on 15% of the cars would be plug-in electric. And they said to prevent brownouts, we would need 3 gas or coal-fired power stations as big as Huntly in the North Island to be able to charge going up at night.
Correct.
So they don't mention that on the news, it's just...
And the fact that
plug-in car.
once you reach a certain level of electric ownership, then the taxes start coming in.
Correct.
Which is not since 2021.
Charges. And that's one of the things that all this pursuit, National's guilty of it as well. Pursuing 100% electrification for our
Thing is-
it's just not feasible.
Now it's a 50 ton
We cannot do it. Our grid cannot support it.
When
France tried, Germany tries to do it, and they've got rolling brownouts. And sometimes they're producing too much electricity, other times it's just not enough, and they're just entirely reliant on the vagaries of wind to produce all of this. Because of course, hand in hand with this pursuit of electrification is the pursuit for supposedly renewable power sources. New Zealand's been great with renewable power source. Right? We have one of the highest percentages of our electricity supply being coming from hydros. It's incredible. Except that when we have a drought, power price spikes, and then electricity retailers go out of business, and there's a lot of complaints because consumers don't want to pay that price, and then we have government intervention again. We don't want to know about that.
Is that natural gas?
And the thing, and I was looking into all our existing hydro plants and that, and it's been decades since they've been upgraded. So we electrify. That there's a high chance our electricity grid could fail at peak times.
Well, it's never failed before.
No.
Apart from
The Auckland blackout?
brownouts and et cetera, yeah.
Yeah, small nuclear plant somewhere.
Yeah. Clean green.
There you go. You got any questions you want
I guess, Ben and I went to a meeting, a week ago, Kern, and they're the ACME, and their spokesperson for the firearms, she was very much an outlaw person, and she was very, very concerned about current legislation and loss of freedom and everything. And she spoke very well, and you know, her whole emphasis was on preserving what we've got, because we're going to lose it, and there's great concern there. And I think when I talk to my workmates and those that go hunting, duck hunting, and out shooting deer and game, and they do it